Hello friends, this is an article from the editorial The Hindu dated 25th July 2022. Weighing in on India's investment-led revival. Prospect of sustaining investment recovery are likely to get harder with a depreciating rupee and rising inflation. From this article, we will come to learn so many things and which is important for our coming mains. Now this article is relevant for our GS paper 3 economy and issues related to growth and development. Now what we are going to learn from this article, public capital expenditure, how it leads to economic growth in India, the budgetary definition of financial investment, why public expenditure is a need of hour as well as necessary for long-term growth in India. Also, the prospect of public capital expenditure programs in India. Later on, we would take questions pertaining to this article, which is going to be very relevant for our mains exam. Now the article says that the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said recently that India's long-term growth prospects are embedded in public capital expenditure programs. She added that an increase in public investment would crowd or pull private investment, thus reviving the economy. We would see this point in a greater detail very soon. The minister was speaking at the third G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting hosted by Indonesia in Bali. Now what is capital expenditure? Public capital expenditure is the money spent by the government on the development like machineries, equipment, infrastructure like school, colleges, hospital, roads, bridges, dams, railway line and facilities like health facilities, education, etc. etc. It also includes expenditure incurred on acquiring fixed asset like land. So this expenditure has a benefit in the extending years in the near future. Now this capital expenditure, which leads to the creation of assets, are long-term in nature and allow the economy to generate revenue for many years by adding or improving production facilities and boosting operational efficiency. It also increases labor participation. It takes the stock of the economy and raises its capacity to produce more in the future. So that's how capital expenditure programs are important. Now the question is, why public capital investment is a need of hour? First, public investment, as the finance minister has claimed that it is a pivot of the ongoing economic revival. Now let's see how. When we create any infrastructure, this creation leads to associated economic activities, which in turn generate more of revenue in the form of taxes, which adds to the GDP, which in turn leads to the development and which in turn drives economy. Now let's understand this by taking an example. Suppose the government build any road which is under infrastructure development program. Now this road itself is a source of transportation and communication. Then as this road gets built up, there would be certain infrastructure that would started getting developed by its own. It could be either through government, public sector expenditure or through private. Now that's how it is mentioned in the article that public sector investment leads to pull of the private investment. Now when there would be a private investment, it could be in the form of, suppose there would be hospitals. Now this hospital would provide services, gives job to the people, and also it will lead to the further growth of pharmaceuticals. Then there would be some school which would later on develop as a human capital and give and provide a workforce to the economy. This school will give jobs to the teachers. There would be some mall. This would give opportunities to textile industries, services, gives jobs which contribute in gig economy like it would give jobs to Zomatos, Swiggy, etc., etc. And now these economic activities would in turn generate revenues. This would act as a source of revenue to the government. And then these activities would later add up, and this revenue would later add up to the GDP. The government would further allocate this revenue into the society. So this is a kind of economic cycle that would keep on going. That's how it works. Secondly, in order to give a boost to the Make in India, public capital expenditure programs are mandatory. This will lower our import dependency, especially on China, leading to deindustrialization. Third would be, with the depreciating currency and rising imported inflation, so the expenditure in manufacturing sector will give a boom in export goods. This will balance our trade and lower the deficit in balance of payment. Third, with the depreciating currency and rising imported inflation, the expenditure in manufacturing sector would give a boom in our export goods. This will balance our trade and lower the deficit in balance of payment. Fourth, public capital expenditure would pull private investment as well as FDIs. It would lead to economic growth in a long term. So whenever there is a crisis arises, it is mandatory for a particular government to make public expenditure, because at that time it is essential to revive the economy, to give a boost to the economy and thereby reviving the economy. For example, after Asian financial crisis in 1997, the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government led For example, after the Asian financial crisis, Atal Bihari Vajpayee government initiated public road building projects. Also, we knew about Golden Quadrilateral to link Metro City using a high quality road network, and Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana to provide good and all-weather road connectivity to unconnected habitations. This initiated a seed of economic revival. So this is one of the foremost need of the hour when we have recently came out of the COVID pandemic and also the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war. Now next is real gross fixed capital formation GFCF rate, the fixed investment to GDP ratio. Now let's understand what is gross fixed capital formation, also called as investment, and it is defined as the acquisition of produced asset. Now what are produced assets? Only those assets that came into existence as a result of production process. For example, machinery, building, installation of vehicles and technology. They do not lead to land or natural resources. And the relevancy of these assets are that they are intended for the use in the production of other goods and services. For example, if there is a leather industry, the machinery would be there, and they would produce much more of the shoes and slippers. So this production of other goods and services over a long period of time. And why these fixed investment are important to us? Because these fixed investment amount to increase in the stock of capital each year, and higher fixed investment implies a higher increase in the stock of capital and output. So this is important. This gross fixed capital formation is important for pre-point of view. Now let's understand what the finance minister has to say about the budgetary definition of investment and capital formation. She says that budgetary definition of investment refers to financial investment which include purchase of existing financial assets or loan offered to the states, and not just capital formation representing an expansion of the productive potential. Now here financial investment means loans offered to the state plus capital formation. Now let me bring your attention to an important point. Here, loans offered to the state. Now a question is likely to come. Schemes for special assistance to state. Capital Expenditure Economic Survey 21-23. Considering the physical environment faced by the state government due to shortfall in the tax revenue arising out from the COVID pandemic, this scheme has been launched by the central government with the purpose to improve the capital expenditure. Now, center is trying to incentivize the state to improve capital expenditure. As you can see on the screen, guidelines on the scheme for assistance to state for capital investment 22-23. So, here we could see and we could prepare a question. A question is likely to come in the upcoming mains based on this, like special assistance to states for capital investment 22-23. An amount of rupees 1 lakh crore has been allotted for the scheme. Under scheme, financial assistance will be provided to the state governments in the form of 50-year interest-free loan for capital investment projects. Now, the central government will pay loan to the state for 50 years free investment. Like they need not have to pay the interest, but they have to just return the principal. The loan provided under this scheme will be over and above normal borrowing ceiling allowed to the state. The third point is the scheme for special assistance to state for capital investment 22-23 has 7 parts. Now this is under 7 part. An amount of 80,000 crore is embarked for this part of scheme. Second part is under Prime Minister Gati Shakti related expenditure. The third part is Prime Minister Gram Sadak Yojana, an amount of 4,000 crore rupees. And Gati Shakti related expenditure will be 5,000 crore rupees. Fourth is incentivize for digitization. An amount of 2,000 crore is embarked under this part of this scheme. Part 5 is optical fiber cable. Then we have urban reforms. How much amount of money has been allocated? 6,000 crore rupees. Disinvestment and monetization. Now under part 7, disinvestment and monetization. This part of scheme aims at providing incentives to state government for privatization, disinvestment of the state public sector enterprises and monetization of assets. Now you can see Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign has 5 components, which is first is economy, infrastructure, systems, vibrant demograph and demand. So these under Atmanirbhar Bharat we have 5 components, and the reforms are ease of doing business, urban reform, one nation, one ration, and power sector reform. So we can see that through loans that has been incurred to the state under capital expenditure, these are going to be used in asset development for these reforms. So these capital expenditure is going to promote Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. Now next is capital formation. Capital formation are nothing but it involves making of more of capital goods such as machines, tools, factories, transportation, equipment material, which are used for future production of goods. For making addition to the stock of capital, saving and investments are essential. Savings of government as well as the citizen and investment. Capital formation means it involves making of more of capital goods such as machine, tool, factories, transport and equipment material, which are used for future production of goods. Also, we should also keep this in mind that capital formation does not only refer to the level of physical good but also to the development of human capital like health, and developing skills, etc. etc. Now next is on gross capital formation. The National Account Statistics provides disaggregation of gross capital formation by sectors, type of assets and modes of financing. Over 90% of the GCF consists of fixed investment. Now this fact we could use in our answer writing. The upturn in the investment rate is welcome, though its productive potential depends on its composition. It says that over 90% of the GCF, which is gross capital formation, consists of fixed investments. We have seen that what is fixed investment? Fixed investment in economies is the accumulation of physical assets such as machineries, buildings, installation of vehicle, etc. And we know that it plays a vital role in the cyclic movement in incomes, as it initiate and support the whole process of income creation. So further it says that this is a welcoming step, but productive potential depends on its composition. Nature of composition means, like, if we have developed, there is a rural and there is another urban road. So with the composition we mean by the nature of the nature in which the investment has taken place. So the urban roads are going to give more outputs than that of the rural road. So here there is another factor that it also decides the composition, which we call it as productive capacity. Through this para, the writer has drawn our attention towards this tableau. This is the share of gross capital formation of various sectors, and it states that from 2015 to 2020, agriculture sector have declined. Industries from 33.7 to 32.5 again declined. Manufacturing sector from 17.6 to 16.5 have declined. Service sector have actually risen from 49 to 52.3. Similarly, transport, there is a boom and it rose by almost double, which is 6.1 to 12.9. And roads, a manifold change, that is from 1.9 to 3 point increased. Now the writer further says that the budgetary figure refers to financial investment, not estimates of capital formation, indicating expansion of economic productive capacity. Let's understand in this way. The writer is saying that the financial investment has been done not much in the promotion of capital formation, which have actually degraded the productive capacity of economy. If the productive capacity decline, then the expansion in the economy would not take place. Now let's understand how. Suppose if a society consumes all that it produces and saves nothing, then in the future productive capacity of the economy would decline because the present capital equipment wears out. In other words, if the whole of the current productive activity is used to produce consumer goods only and no infrastructure development or capital goods are made, then the production of consumer goods in the future will greatly decline. So we should have far-sightedness and we should go for creation of savings and mobilization of savings. When this happens, and how it would happen? When a common people go for savings or government go for savings, then there would be a mobilization of these savings via finance or credit mechanism, and these resources which we have obtained from savings would be invested in government infrastructure programs through private investors or through government. Now another way we could generate capital formation is through disguised unemployment. This is another source of capital formation. Let's see how. This is another source of capital formation to mobilize the saving potential that exists in the farms as disguised employment. So these laborers which are over workforce or which are surplus agriculture workers can be transferred from the agriculture sector without hampering or without diminishing the output, and these could be transferred to the various capital creating project like building of roads, dams, and in health sector. So what we are actually doing, we are making these unproductive workers. So what we are actually doing, we are actually mobilizing these unproductive workers, and we in turn create a human capital out from them, which is again nothing but a capital formation. As I have already mentioned, that capital formation is not only building of assets, but it is also of human capital, skilled labors, etc., etc. And this is what the writer have mentioned in this para. As roads and communications are classic public goods, investment in them is welcome. But overemphasizing it may be loop-sided. For healthy domestic output growth, there is a need for balance between directly productive investments in farms and factories and infrastructure investment. As I have mentioned, that there should be balance between the capital goods and the consumer goods. And this balance was missed. Moreover, the share of agriculture and industry shrank even as the economy gross capital formation rate trended downwards. So now let's conclude. Now the perspective, we should raise our infrastructure investment in manufacturing and in industries so that it would contribute to Atmanirbhar campaign and Make in India program. This is all about this article. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you. Please like and subscribe my channel.